So we are going to talk today about what does it mean to gerrymander. And this is a term that's been thrown around. Everyone's using it, but what does it mean? Where does it come from? Why do we care? So it all started with state representatives in Texas, but we're going to not talk about what's actually happening. I'm going to just give you the background of what it means. So we're going to use a classroom as our analogy. Tables equal districts. The teacher, which is at the top, it represents the state representative, and the classroom is the state. Eventually, we'll talk about what the school represents, the principal, the superintendent, but for now, we're going to keep it very tiny into the classroom, the district, and the state. Okay, so each classroom we can pretend that is a state just for today. So before we keep going, I want to give you a quick reality check uh, as to this example is not perfect. And so teachers in schools are neutral in real life. In politics, whoever makes the maps, the lawmakers, the state representatives, they often, not always, but they often have their own agenda. So I want to also ground ourselves in that reality that in my attempt to bring us to these familiar examples, the examples are not perfect. Also, in a classroom, the kids could complain and be like, I don't agree with this. In politics, the only fix many times is to either cast a vote or write to your elected officials, depending on the state. Okay, so we'll go there when we need to. So, this is what a fair distribution would look like if we were talking about a teacher wanting to create a pizza party and say, okay, and she realizes that there are students who like pepperoni more than, or maybe there are students that also want veggie pizzas. And so if she was going to decide, the teacher, he was going to decide, how do I determine how many pizzas to order? Then there are two ways of doing it. Okay. Fair distribution would mean we use the tables, we vote based on where the tables are, where the children are seated. And this is, you know, what our classroom would look like. So, depending on where the students are seated, the teacher would say, all right, let's just make a vote and see what table will get a pizza based on the majority of votes. This is what a fair distribution looks like. So, in table number 1, for example, we have 3 pepperoni and 1 veggie pizza. In this case, pepperoni would win. Table 6, it's 4 students who want veggie pizzas or want veggie toppings. So they would get 1 full veggie pizza because they won. Table 7, pepperoni wins. Now, to give you a little bit more clear context, once once the students decide or they share what pizza topping they want, then the teacher would say, okay, how many votes did we get for pepperoni? How many votes for veggie? How many votes for, like, how many tables have an equal amount of pepperoni and veggie lovers? In a fair distribution scenario, meaning the teacher simply said, I'm going to leave the students as seated as they are, then we get this result where 67% of pepperoni students, or there are pepperoni lovers, and 12%, almost 13% of veggie students, and 19.4 is a tie. Now, this analogy is based on a 30 student count or a 30 student classroom and 8 tables. Okay. It would look like this. So we have 8 tables, 30 students. There's one table of 2. Now, each student represents, bringing it back to a real life scenario. If this is a state, each table represents a district and each student represents the people that live within that district. Okay. Now we keep hearing these um, gerrymandering used around. So, gerrymandering is the art of rearranging the seating chart so you always win more pizza than you should. So you always order more pizza, more pepperoni or veggie, depending on what you want. Now, the term gerrymandering, just so you know, because I think it's important, I've asked people to see if they know where it comes from, and everyone's like, I don't know. We just know that that's what it means and we use it. But I'm curious. So in 1812, the Governor Albert Gerry of Massachusetts signed off on a new voting district map. And what he did is he created a district, a rearrangement of the tables to favor a party. And when critics started looking at the map, at the final map, the final district, they said, "This is so weird. It looks like a salamander." And so they started calling it back then Jerry and salamander. It's gerrymandering, and this is where the term comes from. In case you didn't know, I thought it was really interesting. So when we gerrymander the distribution, going back to our pizza party example, then let's say that we want to make sure that pepperoni takes the majority of votes in this classroom example. So let's go back to our original seating. So this is how students got seated. So in this case, we kind of have, you know, pepperoni is still the majority based on what students like, but the way that they are seated determines what kind of pizza each table is going to get, right? Now, if we go back to our example or gerrymandering distribution, this would mean that the teacher would then rearrange the seating to make sure that pepperoni gets the most votes. In the real life scenario, we can move people around. So this is why I went back too far. This is why, where's my illustration? The districting, the lines get drawn to go around people's homes and communities to have majority or minority votes in different scenarios. So to bring it back to our classroom, let's say that the teacher's like, all right, we want to order more pizza because there just is. So a gerrymander distribution would mean that the teacher would then reseat the students or draw lines around tables to then say you vote based on where the lines are drawn or how you are seated. In this case, the gerrymander distribution would then skew the pepperoni wins to 73% and the veggie wins to 26.7. We could argue in this case that comparing it to a fair distribution, pepperoni still wins. However, the representation of veggie and even the tie, because we still have to break the tie, this could provide more veggie votes if the tie could be broken. And so the reason why I want to talk about this is because I'm in California and I've already received 2 mailers that talk about what happened in California, which that's for another lesson. But I don't know if people understand why this is important, because I want to bring it back to the very, very, very basics. So maybe you want to learn with me because I'm learning right now as we speak. And so if you want me to continue doing this, I would love to hear. Drop a comment, tag me on the socials, and really start paying attention because it's really important. Let me know.